Where did you go to grammar school?
I went to grammar school. First year I went to school was in Des Arc, Arkansas.
And then
How long did you go there? Just first grade, Dad?
I probably just went to the first grade. I can't remember going to the second there. But anyway, I stood behind the piano most of the time, I think, that year. Because I guess I must have been immature or something. And the teacher made me stand behind the piano all the time.
So he got into music early.
I could have probably made one of those things if I could have been old enough. But anyway, her name was Mrs. Loretz. I remember that teacher's name. I never will forget her.
It's not working.
And where'd you go, Dad?
And
Hey, it's not
she
working, guys.
she would write a note home to my mom
I'm glad it's
and
not
ask
working.
my mom, so you sure he's
It's
6
not
years old?
working. It's not working,
okay,
Dad.
take it to Becca.
What?
Take it to Becca then. Okay, take it to Becca then. Have Becca fix it. Go tell Becca. Say, Becca, can you fix it?
Did they have kindergarten back then, Dad? Or did they basically just start in first grade?
Huh?
Did they have a kindergarten or did it just
No,
start
they
in
didn't
first
have
grade?
kindergarten back then.
Ask Becca if she can fix it.
That's like now. I mean, the kids got to start
Yeah,
preschool and all that
they didn't have
before
any of that.
kindergarten. They don't. If they're not preschool, they're behind by the time you get to kindergarten.
Yeah, they didn't have a kindergarten or preschool back in them days.
Go sit down here. Then where'd you go, Dad? After first grade in Desert?
Oh, next school I remember was Ball Knob, Arkansas.
Dad, I know where that's at.
And,
I got lost. Went there.
I think, I don't exactly remember. I must have been about, I was in about the second or third grade. I can't remember that.
Remember your teacher?
But anyway, we lived up on the hill and we had to walk to school quite a ways. And it was what they call McKay Hill. It was 3 houses up on top of the hill. And
So you walked downhill to school, but uphill after school.
we walked down the trail had a trail that go down to town. And then we'd walk out to the road and down the road to go to school. But that's about all I remember of that, except that was where I had the scar right across my eye here.
Come
That
on.
was where I was chopping wood when I was real little, and I hit a limb or pole with the axe, and the axe flew up and hit me right over the eye. I remember Mom and we had some people who lived by us who was named Goff. And they filled that full of sugar and camphor.
And put it on your eye.
Above my eye.
Did you get a scar from it?
Yeah, there used to be a scar up there. Right in my eyebrow.
What do you remember most about your parents?
Huh?
What do you remember most about your parents?
About your mom and dad, what do you remember most?
Oh. Well, my dad, most of it, I remember he was a great talker. I mean, he could talk to anybody. He just could seem like talk people into doing things. Some people, he'd go into a town maybe, decide to move someplace, he'd go in and he could have a job in no time when other people couldn't even find one because he's such a talker, he'd talk them into it, I guess. And he could find a house when nobody else could find a house to live in. He was quite a talker. He never did meet a stranger. And my mother, she was always kind of a quiet person. And I remember when it used to come a storm, we'd get real cloudy, and my dad, he drank a lot, and he was generally always gone. And I remember my mother get all us kids around her, I guess in case it cyclone come and blow the house away, we'd all go together. And my mother, she was, in her later years, was a very religious person. She liked to go to church and go down to help the ladies in the kitchen when they'd make, donuts or something like that to sell. But she enjoyed doing that.
She used to crochet those little doilies.
Yeah,
She must have had a lot of patience. I mean, the little tiny crocheting.
Well, she liked her dogs and her cats and her birds and things like that. She loved
parakeets, huh?
I used to tease her a lot about her dogs. She had one little dog that when you started out the door, well, he'd try to nip your heels.
Chip.
Oh, Chip, yeah, that was Chip.
What happened to him? They finally have to get rid of him, or?
Yeah, they finally got rid of him, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, I used to tease her, and she'd say something about putting them to sleep, and I'd just tell her, I'd say, well, ain't no use to spend your money to put them to sleep. I'd just take a hammer and knock them in the head. She said, no, you ain't either.
How old do you think Mickey was? I mean, she was old, and then Loopy, her little daughter dog, was old.
I don't know how old.
Seemed like they lived.
How old they were.
Yeah. Mickey was black, and then by the time she got old, she was about half white. I mean, she was so gray and everything.
Yeah.
Loopy grew pretty old too, huh?
Yeah, she was.
Then the other dog, were they born on Christmas Day or Thanksgiving Day up in San Jose?
I
Those
think
two
it was
dogs.
Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, she had the Loopy and Tiny, and then Seal had Tiny, because she got old and passed away. And Loopy and Mickey, Grandma and Grandpa had them until they were ancient.
Yeah.
Always had to come over and stay a little while because I gotta go home.
Yeah.
Take care of the dogs.
Yeah, they didn't stay long. They just come by and see how everybody was, visit a little while, and they'd be going home.
So, what were your favorite toys or games as a kid?
What?
Your favorite toy or game when you were a kid?
Well, really, I didn't have very much toys to play with. And I remember one Christmas there in Desert, when I was just a little kid, I went and my dad and them was looking for me one day, and I was down in town looking at a little wagon that was in this window in the store. And I remember on Christmas Day they had that under the Christmas tree, and I always remembered that little wagon because when I get out in dirt and everything, I remember the little wheels that make little tracks in the dirt.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that was something else, and I'd pull that wagon around.
So you went downtown and was looking at it? Did you?
Yeah, they found me. Well, they was looking for me. They come down.
So you went to town from the house without them knowing?
Yeah, town. Our house was. We just walked around. There was a post office. We walked over to the post office. And then it was on Main Street there in Desert.
How old do you think you were?
So.
Well, Desert, you went first grade in Desert, so you must not have been too old, huh?
No, I wasn't too old. I was probably around 6 or something. But anyway, I remember that little wagon.
What else you remember about Christmases and pigtails and stuff?
I remember another time at Christmas time. Well, my dad had killed some pigs, and my grandmother, she got one of the pigtails and wrapped it up in a paper, and when they was passing out the gifts within candy and stuff like that. Well, my grandmother, she gave me this pigtail, and when I unwrapped it, I just took the old pigtail and was going back and forth like that, and my grandma started crying.
She didn't think that was the first gift you were going to get.
Yeah,
Huh?
she didn't think it was the first gift I was going to get, but she started crying, calling it looked so pitiful again.
So I have a question. Because of the wagon your parents got you, is that why you bought all the or wanted to make sure that all the grandkids got the red wagons for Christmas?
Remember the first grandkid, usually you got them a wagon?
Yeah, I think that was the first thing we bought them was the grandkids. We always tried to buy the first grandkids a wagon or something like that.
Just kind of to carry on that tradition from your parents, or for your little wagon that you got?
You what?
I'm
sorry.
That was kind of a tradition. I mean, you got a little red wagon. You liked it when you were little, so you liked to get a little red wagon for the first grandkids.
Yeah.
So they would have one in their family.
Wagon, yeah.
What were some things your mom and dad always said to you when you were young?
What?
What's something that your mom and dad, what was one of the things you remember they always said to you?
Oh. Hurry up. Well, to tell you the truth, when we were young, we went to work when we was real young. I was 9 years old, and we started picking cotton.
Did you pick cotton in Arkansas or just in Missouri and Arkansas?
Yeah, in Arkansas. We picked cotton, and I remember 9 years old, I could pick 150 pounds of cotton a day. And back then, you only got about 40 cents a 100.
So you made 60 cents?
Yeah.
Did they have those big old long cotton sacks?
Yeah,
kind of drug along behind you?
They had.
Did you know they had
I think they had different lengths. They had 6 foot and 10 foot and 12 foot sacks.
Was it just a strap around your shoulder and you just picked it
Yeah.
and stuffed it in there? And when they got full, you took it to the weigh place, the cotton up there where the people were, and they weighed the cotton for you.
Yeah, they had a they called them. And we'd take our cotton after we got our sacks full, we'd throw them up on our shoulder and carry them up to the scales, and they'd weigh them. And then we just started working that way and working in the strawberries, pick strawberries. And we chop cotton. That's when
So
you
how do you
thin
chop?
the cotton out.
Thin it out.
Yeah. We done that after we got old enough to chop cotton. So we didn't have too much playtime. We stayed busy.
How old were you when you went to California, Dad?
I was about 12 years old. We went one day I think I told this to Becky the other day, all this stuff. And we went to move some, we was out in the cotton field one day, and my dad said, who all wants to go to California? And
Everybody said instead of picking cotton, they'd go anywhere.
everybody, naturally, all his kids, I do. And he said, well, shoulder your sacks. And we said, are you kidding? He said, no. He said, I mean it. Man, we shouldered our sacks and we headed for the scales. And we got it. And I remember my dad and all of us took off for California. I remember my dad had an old straight 8 Oldsmobile. And we had all of us, 7 of us. Well, there was a guy with us, made 8. And we had a dog, naturally. And we rented a cabin in Texas one night, and I remember my dad and them, they wasn't used to a gasoline stove, and they turned all the burners on. They lit all the top burners, but they didn't light the oven. But it was still gas. Pretty soon that was all in the house, in that cabin, and that ignited in that oven. It blowed the oven door open, and I think that dog was the first one out the door, but everybody headed for the door. Out the door we went. But anyway, that's the way we got used to a gas stove. We got initiated real quick.
So where'd you go first in California?
Then my uncle, he come out. But we was there, and we was, had went on to Eloy, Arizona. And we was picking cotton there. And my dad's brother, he come and got us and paid our way on to Madera, California. We stayed with them
Uncle Al.
Uncle Al. We stayed there for, well, I don't know how long, not very long. And then we got Dad got a place, rented a house or lived, we didn't rent it, we moved out on a ranch and picked cotton for these people. And then eventually we moved up in town on 4th Street in Madera. And we lived there until I was about 15 years old. And then we moved to Arizona, and me and my dad went to work in well, it was kind of a dry, it was Rosenberg's packing house, is what it was.
Fruit packing or meat?
It was like raisin, mostly raisin.
Okay.
And so that's where my first public job was in Rosenberg Packing House in Fresno, California.
And how much money did you make there? Like what was your hourly rate?
I don't remember, but it was probably $1 or something an hour back then. I was back in the 1950s. Let's see. It was 1945.
Yeah. What was that ranch like south of Fresno way? I think Mom worked on that ranch. What was the big ranch that you guys worked at? Can't even think of the name of it myself. We go.
I don't know.
For a while they had like a gas station and a hotel and stuff there. I can't think of the name of the ranch.
Yeah, I don't remember that in Dana.
Yeah.
But that's.
You went to Oregon. That's where you met Mom at, in Oregon, right? You guys
Yeah,
were
I
both
met.
picking fruit. Oh, you picking cherries or?
When we was training hops,
Okay.
we went to Oregon. Well, that was after I was about 18 years old,
Uh-huh.
or from 18 to 21. I was living with Lucille and Hubert, my brother-in-law and sister. And then they drafted me. And anyway, I was on probation, so they sent me back home.
Hold up. Why were you on probation?
Uh,
I want to hear this story.
He was ornery.
well, I was pretty bad to drink back in my early days. Get in fights and everything. Anyway, those days I don't like to remember them too much.
So they didn't take you that time, but later after your
Yeah,
mom got
they
married, right?
sent me back home, and then when I got back home to my sister and them's house, my dad and them was going to Oregon. They was all loaded up and everything, so I just crawled in the car and went with them to Salem, Oregon. Well, it wasn't Salem. It was we went to my brother-in-law. My sister had married, my youngest sister had married, and so they went with us, and we had an old 34 Ford. Anyway, and going across the mountains, it didn't have no windshield wiper, and there's snowing and everything. And I was driving, and I had to take my hand and wipe the snow off the windshield sometimes.
So you had to
I
keep the
could
window
see.
open then?
Yeah, well,
Snow
the
in the
window
other-
was out. Didn't have no window in it, so I just kind of take my hand out there and wipe the snow off where I could see. But we followed a big old truck across the mountain and followed in his tracks, and that way we went
Get all
across
the
the
way
mountain
through.
pretty good. But anyway, after we trained hops for a while, and then after training hops, we went into picking beans, and then a little while after that, I met Ruth, my wife, the first wife, and we went together for about a month or two. Then on July the 9th, 1951, we got married. And we picked beans, and then her dad and mother had a house back in Salida, California. So we come back, and they had a little side room out to the side of their house, so me and Ruth, we stayed in that, and it was on July the 15th we got married, and then September the 20th I got drafted again.
And they kept you that time, huh? Sent you to Korea?
Well, yeah, that was, but well, I went to Baltimore, Maryland to take my basic training, and at that time I become a Christian. I didn't carry a weapon, but they called me in quite a few times, would talk to me, and I'd tell them that I was no better than any of the rest of the men, but when I go overseas, I said I'm not going to carry a rifle, and when I come back, I'm going to still be without one. I said, because the Bible says thou shalt not kill. And I was a new Christian. I just kept that in my heart. And so anyway, when I got overseas, they put me in an ambulance platoon, and I drove an ambulance all the time I was in Korea. And I'd go up on the front line. One of the volunteers go up on the front line to stand on standby up there, and I'd always volunteer to go up there because you got 4 points, and you get 28 points, you get to come home. But while I was in Baltimore, I got 10 days off, and I went home. And I remember me and another guy, we went to New York, and we walked into the airport, and the guy that was behind the counter, there was a whole mess of people in there. And he said, those 2 soldier boys that just walked in, he says, I got 2 seats left, and he says, I'm going to give them to them soldier boys.
Oh.
So we got right on that, right in there and out. And the Lord was really with me on that trip. When I got to California, I forget the name of it, down there in LA. What's the name of that town there the plane's going to?
San Diego?
Huh?
San
In
Diego?
LA.
Oh,
Where's LAX at? Is that in
Anaheim?
Los Angeles?
yeah, it's in Los
Yeah,
Angeles.
it was down there close to that.
Okay.
Anyway, they said when I got there and I got off the plane, well, I went out. I walked out to the highway, and there's a bunch of guys out there, and I asked them. I says, "How is the hitchhiking?" They said, "You can't hardly get a ride." And they had some those. They was working on the road right along there. And I walked up the road a ways where there was no those things that marking off where there's working. And just as I got to the end of that, there was a truck driver pulled over. I motioned that I wanted to ride. And he pulled over, and I ran up there, and he asked me, where you going? I said, to Fresno. He said, you're in luck. That's right where I'm going. So I got a ride from there clear into Fresno, and out on Ventura Avenue, there was a bar out there we used to go to all the time, Johnny's Bar. And the taxi had pulled up there and was letting somebody off. And I run down there and got the taxi and went right on out to the Lord I got out there, and I come in a day earlier than Ruth expected me to be there. And I remember while I was home, that 10 days, and Ruth had become pregnant, and I felt the baby move. Randy felt the baby move while I was home. And so I spent about 14 months over in Korea, and Ruth would send me pictures of Randy, and Randy learned to walk. That's the oldest son, my oldest son. He learned to walk at 9 months old, and she'd send me pictures of Randy, and I'd have those pictures. And I remember when I come home, and I went in, I grabbed Ruth and hugged her, and Randy, he just went berserk, and he run to his aunt and climbed up in her lap, because it scared him when I grabbed his mom. And that night he wouldn't let me go to bed at all. Every time I started getting in bed, he'd have his fit. So I had to be back to camp to get mustered out the next day. And so I come in that evening, and Randy acted like he'd knew me all his life. He just come sit on my lap.
Can I see a lawnmower? Can I see a lawnmower?
Just had a good time. So that's
Can I see
quite a
a
bit of the way
lawnmower?
my life was.
What do you remember about your grandparents?
What am I gonna do about my grandkids?
No, your
Your
grandparents.
What do you remember about them?
I don't remember. I didn't know any of my grandparents except the one that gave me the pigtail. And I was so young, I don't remember her too much.
Um, what are some of your memories of your brothers and sisters?
What I remember about?
Your
What are
brother.
some of your memories?
Some things you remember about your brothers and sisters.
Can I see our lawnmower?
My brothers and sisters, those, I know they were like me. They had to work a lot when there was, after they got up old enough. And I remember one time my sister Lucille, when we lived there in Desert, and there was some kid there. He was a lot bigger than me, but anyway, he was beating me up. And I was trying to fight him. Every time I'd go in to fight him, he'd hit me in the nose. And my sister, you know how little girls always likes to dress up in their grandma and their mom's shoes, high heel shoes, and feel like they're grown up, you know. But anyway, my sister Lucille had those high heel shoes on, and my mom, she hollered out there, "You guys let that boy beat him up, so I'm gonna beat you up." And my sister, she grabbed off one of them shoes and she hit the guy right in the forehead with the heel of that shoe, and the blood just started flowing down his face. And I remember he went home and telling his mom, and I guess she cleaned him all up, and we lived in a kind of a 2-story house, and it had a lot of apartments in it. And I remember his mother come out there, and she was just cussing and going on. And anyway, later that kid was out in the yard, and he had a BB gun, and my mom wouldn't let us go out because she knew she was going to shoot us with that BB gun. But anyway, that's what I remember. And we were pretty close, me and my Lucille. It was pretty close.
How many kids were there total? How many kids did your parents have? 5, right?
We had, there was 2 boys and 3 girls. And my mother